Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. In by the skin of my teeth, but it counts. And I would have loved to have just taken a break and stopped, but I was on such a roll today. I got so much accomplished, and yet still feel like I have fallen behind, that I still have lots to do. And you know what? We always have lots to do. We always have something that we can do extra, or it's like being put ahead of the class when you were a kid, right? I wasn't that kid put ahead by a couple of years, but that opportunity is always there by our own choices to either sit back after we've absorbed a lesson and congratulate ourselves and say, okay, that's it for a bit, or to say, hey, why don't we just keep going, right? Why don't we just keep going and see if we can get a little bit ahead of the game? Oh, kind of like summer school, getting a couple of extra courses under the belt. We got this word, and it's a doozy word for me too, because it's in the serendipities of some of these words and the sequencing that they're showing up, that it's forcing me to go into a certain aspect of myself that you know I'm not a tough girl, not in the very least. And I've had that fantasy life realized. Grateful because it could have been a different choice, but by my own choices and by some of those serendipities and miraculous moments that come across our path every once in a while, I've had, beautiful, tender moments in my life. And, you know, I can say, "Oh, I'm tough. I can take it. Bring it on. One more. Next." Right? That's in our tenderness that we do that. And that's the truth. If you're hanging out with me, you're probably fairly fairly very highly sensitive. You may be empathic. There are lots of other terminologies. I came across a paper where I had written them all down. Yeah, this one here. Like, it all depends in your culture, your beliefs, your family traditions, your upbringing. It just depends on so many things, that something that's so common as, right, a highly sensitive or an empath could be known by so many other terminologies. And sometimes, we come across those answers that we've been looking for all our lives and don't even recognize that those answers are for us, only because we don't recognize the terminology. We don't recognize somebody else expressing the exact same thing, but only wrapped in their culture, their religious ideas, political ideas, their family traditions. And that is a truth, and there's a lot of them here. I'm not going to read them out, but I can clearly see there's over 10 of them for the exact same. And I'm not going to say exact same, because again, it's those cultures, those religious ideas, political ideas, those family traditions, those upbringings that we have that create the people that we are. And that's what makes us so unique from each other, because each one of us has a different experience in that. And if you're anything like me, you probably heard over and over again in your own life, right? You're just too darn sensitive, right? That you take things too seriously, or can't you take a joke, or I was just kidding, man. Have you got it right? And this was constant in my life, and it got drilled into me that I was highly sensitive. Okay, I was highly sensitive. It was a lot deeper and a lot more pronounced in my life than just that. But you can start there, right? And so what happens is I become tough, right? I learn not to express myself. I learn not to grumble or complain or right. And lots of times, when I felt that I did need a little bit of comfort, a little bit of uh, just even somebody sitting there while I was dealing with what I was dealing with, like I never even bothered to search out that because, right, I was just too darn sensitive that I should just be able to handle it on my own. And me and my sisters, that's the dynamic upbringing that we had, right? But for especially me, I would think, because we each played those roles in my parents' household, and it was in my choices. I said, okay, I'm up for that, right? I'm not too sure what this was going to be all about, but yeah, okay, I'm in, right? And I created a lot of these experiences for myself that make up my my makeup, right? And if I'm highly sensitive, and I suspect that I am because of the triggers in my life, and you'll recognize them too, just in those triggers in your life. And you sometimes, if you can recognize those triggers, right, then you could really see the sensitivities that we have. And sometimes, right, we can practice over the tough girl. Bring it on. One more. Next. Is that all you've got? But why are we doing that? Why are we inviting that into our lives, right? Because in our sensitivities, what we think about is realized. So we're always going to have those triggers that we're so sensitive to in our lives if we're constantly dwelling on them and thinking about them, right? We got this word tenderness this week, and I wanted to say, there's lots of things like a tender heart. There's nothing more beautiful than a tender heart. But at the same time, that tender heart that can't see the pothole in front of them, or that person that doesn't mean them well, or that rug that's about to be pulled out from amongst them, or that overgiving in the stories of neediness that we can't help but want to take care of and nurture and, right, take it on as our own. We can be our own worst enemies in our sensitivities. Tenderness is beautiful, right? Tenderness is beautiful, and I think there are a lot of tender hearts out in the world that have kind of learned that, oh, don't mess with me. That have learned that I can take it, or I is that all you've got, and all those other things that we project out there to say, hey, right, I'm tough. I'm not a complainer. I'm not a whiner. I'm not a crybaby, right? And that's kind of sad. You know, there's nothing more beautiful than a good cry because it's a signal of healing, right? There's that saying that nothing will heal a deep wound better than talking, crying, and time. And when we deny ourselves those very things, then it makes it kind of difficult for us to overcome some of those things that shouldn't be so difficult. Shouldn't be so difficult, and yet they are difficult. Why? Because what we think about is realized. And when we're triggered, we go right back to that moment. We go right back there, and we're there in that pain, and we're triggered, and we're going to lash out. Or if you're that stifled, that you're not right, you're not going to say anything or do anything, you're just going to take it. Right? To each one are choices. I'm not a big fan of turn the other cheek, though I practice it quite a bit in my life, and that's a few decades now, right? But I got here somehow, and I don't think that me not turning the other cheek on occasions have actually hurt me in any way. And I think possibly because I was brave enough to face, right? To face that opposition, to face what nobody else was willing to face, to step into everything that somebody and everyone was just staring in fascination, dazzled and amazed at the possibility of some unkindness without stepping in and, right, alleviating the situation in whatever manner they possibly can. These experiences are experiences that I have, not personally, but I've witnessed them in other people, and they are very unkind things that imprint on us, that make us more sensitive, right? And there's nothing worse than a half healed wound that's got a finger poking at it or digging into it, right? Tenderness can be a beautiful thing, but that tenderness also can be something that we take on in some form of, I don't know, martyrship, right? Thinking that it's a prerequisite, something that we have to go through. I tell you, part of my affirmation is I'm going to walk into this. I'm walking into the life that I am creating for myself. Just taking those baby steps, just putting one foot over the next, right? Or one foot above the next. And that's how I'm going to move, right? The most painless way that I possibly can without the hindrance of no movement at all, because it possibly very easily could have been no movement at all. And wouldn't that have been a sad thing, right? What you don't know does hurt you. It's truth. What you don't know does hurt you. Okay, you guys. That's my good chair. I didn't know how I was going to come at the word, but I hit that live button, and I trust there'll be a perspective, an experience, a story, right? A lesson, and I'll be back in right after I make myself another cup. Oh, I've got a full cup of coffee here, right? When I sit here, I'll come right back in, make my thumbnail, and take in the lesson for myself. Everybody, have a good night. I'll see you.